we'll see what happens. No particular rush, but we'll see what happens. But healthcare is coming along well. The government is coming along really well. A lot of good things are happening. Thank you, folks.
You're going to get a healthcare vote next week?
100 days?
Don't know. Doesn't matter if it's next week. Next week doesn't matter.
President Trump on Friday denying he's trying to jam through legislation before the symbolic 100-day mark, which he'll reach next Saturday. And it's time now for our Sunday group. GOP strategist Karl Rove, Charles Lane of the Washington Post, Peter Baker, who covers the White House for the New York Times, and from the Wall Street Journal, Kimberley Strassel. Karl, how much emphasis did Bush 43 and all of you put on racking up victories in your first 100 days, and how do you think President Trump has done in his first 100 days?
We put very little effort into it. I mean, this is a completely phony measure. It's derived from Franklin Delano Roosevelt's. Right. He was inaugurated 6 weeks later on March 4th. He had 60 members in the Senate, 35 Republicans versus them. He had 322 Democrats to 109 Republicans, and the country was in the middle of a depression. And
I want to point out, you did not know I was going to ask that question.
Yeah, well, look, it is not. This is completely phony, and I agree with the president. It's ridiculous. Having said that, we're at 100 days, and we're going to have to measure it. And he's got a number of successes: cabinet, Supreme Court nomination. You heard it from Langford. 13 Congressional Regulatory Act bills signed, 2 more on the way to him. Veterans Choice Bill, giving limited choice to veterans in getting their health care. His actions on jobs for Carrier and Ford. 24 executive orders, some pretty good meetings with foreign leaders. But look, some big setbacks. The travel ban executive order, a mess. Now fixed, but a mess. Obamacare, repeal and replace. Failed to get it done, and that's difficult to do, but pressed it early. I think the issue, though, is expectations. The president is dismissed the 100 days, but too often he has said, well, we're going to get it done because it's easier, we're going to get it done because it's quick, or it's going to happen now. And this town doesn't work that way. You may be able to cut a real estate deal that way, but you can't govern the country that way.
We ask you for questions for the panel, and on the issue of the president's first 100 days, Glenn English sent this on Facebook. Why is the Republican Congress still one of President Trump's biggest obstacles, when they currently have the majority? Peter, how do you answer Glenn, and why hasn't the president been able to do a better job of keeping his own troops on Capitol Hill in line?
Well, there are 2 things. First of all, just because you control Congress doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be easy. Look at President Obama's first year. When he did health care, it took him a full year out, and he had even stronger majorities than President Trump did in the Senate, for instance. Secondly, this is a president who isn't really a Republican standard bearer. You know, he is in some ways the first independent president we've had, in the sense that he sometimes fights with his own party as much as he does with the other party. So he doesn't have that base of longstanding support and allies and credibility among his own party. They're more willing to fight among themselves and with him, as you just showed with your interview with Senator Langford, than he might want. And he hasn't necessarily worked to cultivate that. So I think basically that doesn't mean that he's not going to get there. It's only 100 days. Most big legislation, if you look at presidents in the last 50, 60 years, didn't happen in the first 100 days. And I think the first 100 days was not necessarily a good measure of what a presidency would turn out to be. If you looked at George W. Bush's first 100 days, that would not have been a measure of what his presidency would be over 8 years. You wouldn't have understood what would become the most important elements. So I think that it is a sort of a ridiculous standard, but it is one that he set. He himself repeatedly, as you showed on your clips, used the 100-day marker until he got close to it and obviously felt a little annoyed by it.
Kim, let's talk about the logjam that's coming up this week. First of all, government funding, that has to get done, or we have a shutdown next Saturday. You heard Mick Mulvaney. They're continuing to push to try to get something done on Obamacare repeal and replace. And now suddenly, kind of a shock, they've announced that he's going to have at least some outline of his principles on tax reform. Is this all about trying to put something for us to talk about the first 100 days, and how do you think it's going to shake out?
No, I think the important thing here is the 100-day mark doesn't matter, but there are other deadlines that do matter. All the way back in the fall, they came up with a budget resolution that was always going to expire at the end of April. They've got to get that done. They've also decided to do health care if they get it done through this budget reconciliation process. They pass that reconciliation. That's going to expire soon, the authority to do it under that. So they've got to hit these deadlines. Look, I think one thing that people don't realize is we're witnessing a return to the way politics used to be done. We're so used to 8 years of having a president said, I'm going to issue a regulation and it will just happen that way. And now you've got all these Republicans. It's a very diverse coalition. They're negotiating. They're going back and forth. And you remember, it makes me think of the 1986 Reagan tax reform. People said that that bill was dead about 12 times until it wasn't dead and it got passed. So there's going to be a lot. It can be a slow process at times, but this is how you get bills and they get better along the way and you get to consensus.
For all of you out there who are getting really tired of our talking about the 100 days, I want to point out that candidate Trump, during the campaign, issued a contract with American voters. Let's put it up on the screen. And in this, he talked about all of the things he said he was going to get done in the first 100 days. Some of it he has done, more of it he hasn't. Chuck, how do you score what the president has done so far and what still needs to be done and prospects for that?
Well, to Kim's point, this is a guy who very often used the word quickly. Remember that in the campaign, how he would say this or that is going to get done, and it's going to get done quickly. We're going to defeat ISIS quickly. We're going to fix health care quickly. He presented himself as somebody who had these extraordinary capabilities to transcend all this normal politics that has now come to bear. So to the extent that people are judging him harshly on the first 100 days, I would say it's the expectation that he himself created. I just want to emphasize one point that we've gone over a little bit here, which is a real problem in this 100 days, which is staffing up this administration. They are way behind on that job. They do not have the political appointees confirmed, not even very many of them nominated. I think we were talking before that it's only about 10% have even been
95 out of 907
have even been nominated.
Yeah.
And he can't get anything done to the extent he wants to get it done unless he has the personnel in place to do it.
I got less than a minute left in this segment, Karl, and I want to ask, if you had 10 minutes, but you got to summarize it for me in less than a minute, 10 minutes in the Oval Office with this president, what would your advice be for him for the next 100 days?
Lower the expectations. Stop saying, as Chuck said, quickly and easily. Second of all, stop tweeting. I was in front of a group this week, 90% of whom voted for Trump. I was asked a similar question, what do you think he should do differently? I said, stop tweeting. The entire crowd began to spontaneously applaud. They want him to be the president, and they want him to be successful. Third, put some more process in there. You need to have, one of the reasons they're behind on appointments is there's no organized process that regularly shows up in that office where they say, Mr. President, we agreed that we would come to you today with these recommendations, and we got them ready. So that on both policy and personnel, he needs more process.
All right. We have to take a break here.